Joining me now is the author of international bestsellers, including his latest work on democracies and death cults, Douglas Murray. Welcome back to the program. Let's start with French President Emmanuel Macron, a man with an approval rating of 16%. He has blasted social media platforms, claiming their free speech arguments are rubbish. He said he wanted totally transparent algorithms and that free speech is BS if nobody knows how you are guided through it.
Because, free speech is a pure bullshit if nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech, especially when it's to be guided from one hated speech to another hated speech. I just want to have a transparent road through these different speeches, and I want, by the way, to have a sort of public order. I want to avoid racist speech, hated speech.
It seems, Douglas, that Emmanuel Macron sees free speech as a threat to public order.
Yes, well, I have to say, for once, I agree with President Macron. He's right that we do need some kind of idea of what the algorithms are doing on certain platforms. But the idea that they're particularly disfavoring him is doubtless the reason why he's decided to raise this now. Nobody seems to mind when the algorithms are screwed, as long as they're screwed in their own direction. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is that when a political leader feels some kind of heat, feels that the news is going in a direction they don't want it to go, it's become incredibly easy to blame social media platforms and disinformation and much more. I'm all for transparency, and I'm all for the platforms actually being able to reveal to us effectively, when we're having things held from us, when we're having things pushed our way we haven't necessarily asked for. But I don't think people should call for it just because they're feeling some political heat on their own side. And I think that's exactly what President Macron is doing.
Now, let's go to the UK, where this call on the Jeremy Vine show has gone viral. Listen to the reaction of the host when the caller mentions being stabbed twice in London.
Are you really saying you'd be at less of a risk there than you would be in Tower Hamlets? On what basis?
Well, I've been stabbed twice in London. That's the basis. There you go.
It's a big city. Sadly, that happens sometimes.
There you go, Douglas. It's a big city. Sometimes that happens. Not much sympathy there from the host.
No, nobody does get much sympathy in modern Britain if they've suffered a crime like a stabbing, because it doesn't really fit the narrative. It's in the same way that people have been saying, of course, for years with terrorist attacks, that we mustn't really focus on the victims and we've got to just sort of push forward. As Sadiq Khan might say, these are all just things you've got to put up with in the modern, wonderful, diverse, multicultural, pluralistic city. I'm not sure that is the case. And I think it's remarkable that we see in a moment like that, not just a victim of crime mentioning it, but this profound lack of sympathy in the commentating class. And when people wonder, well, why is that? It's simply because such things reveal very uncomfortable truths. And they unveil the kind of uncomfortable truths that really any journalist should want to look at. The job of the media class is not simply to sort of stroke everyone's presumptions and make them all feel good. It's actually meant to be to look at problems like that, tease them out in the open and try to address how to solve them. But that's about the last thing that much of the commentating class in the UK, as in many other countries, actually wants to do.
Now, Douglas, I've been keen to get your take on the scandal that engulfed Manchester United co-owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe after he said this.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. The UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It'll cause, the UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
Douglas, Sir Jim has since apologised. He said if his language offended some people, he was sorry. What do you make of the comments, and was an apology necessary?
Well, this is a classic thing of modern Britain and much of the modern West. What he said is his own opinion. Very many people agree with him. Some people might disagree with some of the wording, but much of the facts of what he said is just indisputable. But no, we never do get to that. We never do get to the facts or the actual discussion. What we've had instead for the last week has been the great modern British pastime of shooting the messenger. Everybody up to and including the Prime Minister of the UK has decided to talk about this, to decide to condemn his remarks. We've had our brilliant Foreign Secretary as well as Prime Minister across the airwaves saying nobody should have used these words. Do they have nothing better to do? Is their job really to be like anyone else on X, just showing their own political stance and trying to silence somebody else's speech? It's absolutely typical. You get into this shoot the messenger mode. And if anyone doubts that, by the way, since making those comments, Jim has received, among other things, an unbelievable pasting across the British media, the commentating class, and much more, accusing him of tax dodging and much more. He has contributed, by the counts I've seen, hundreds of millions of pounds in taxes to the UK, sometimes more than 100 million, I think, in 1 year. That is an enormous amount that the Exchequer has gained from him. But of course, people don't want to go to the question that he has raised, among others, which is people who don't pay their way in society. Instead, they've tried to decide that he is particularly guilty of not paying his way in society. As I say, it's not just shooting the messenger in cases like this. It's shooting in and then jumping up and down on his body. I mean, it's absolutely obscene. And I wish that at some point modern Britain was grown up enough to actually have the sort of debate which he raised and get down to the issues that he's raised instead of this stupid prancing around the language policing, which is all we ever hear.
Well, Douglas, given that the attacks have continued, and in fact, one could argue that bullies have been emboldened by the apology, was the apology a mistake? Should he have stuck to his guns?
No, absolutely he shouldn't have apologized. But I mean, I can see why he did, because the howling, screaming mob that comes down on somebody when they say something like this. I mean, one of the things in the last week has been that that his club has foreign players, and people are trying to pretend that his comments would effectively keep foreign players out of his football club. Well, the players in his football club are highly paid, very unusual types of migrant, aren't they? They're people who are paid, for instance, £300,000 a week. Now, I don't think anyone in Britain has a problem with very highly skilled, high-performing athletes and footballers coming to the UK. That's not what his comments referred to. They referred to the people who come to a country, take advantage of welfare benefits, don't pay in, and only take out. Well, is that not something worth mentioning? Is a taxpayer who pays more than their share in taxes, a very large share in taxes, are they not allowed to have a view about any of this? Is everyone just meant to roll over and apologize endlessly? No, I wish he hadn't given in. I understand why he did. But as ever, yes, as you say, Rita, the bullies are simply emboldened. And unfortunately, it means that fewer people, as ever, will actually come out and say what they think at a time when more people need to come out and say what they think about things that are incredibly unjust and unfair to the majority of the public.
Staying in the UK, where the Keir Starmer government plans to follow in Australia's footsteps and implement a ban on under-16s accessing social media. How do you see this policy, Douglas? There's a lot of well-meaning people who support it because they think social media does great harm to young people, but I can see it having all sorts of unintended consequences as well.
It sure does. I mean, I don't trust the British government at this stage to do almost anything well, let alone policing the internet. I think there are several issues here. I mean, clearly, and the work of Jonathan Haidt and others has shown this, clearly, the use of social media has some very negative effects on people when they're in their teens, particularly when they're in the age of sort of 13 plus. And they're starting to think about their image, and there's just terrible effects, particularly on young girls. And the data all proves that. Whether or not that should mean that there should be some kind of social media ban, or whether it means, which is what I would prefer, that schools and parents and others are better at making sure that kids aren't on their phones endlessly. I'd rather prefer the latter, it has to be said. But yes, the unintended consequences of all of this sort of thing are almost limitless in their number. And as I say, I mean, who in the British government would you trust to do such a thing, anything but ineptly? This is a government that can't even do a deal to give away islands to Mauritius without being incredibly inept about it and ending up paying through the nose for it. So no, I don't trust them to manage to get on top of social media any more than I expect them to manage to get on top of anything else.
Before you go, Douglas, I loved your piece in the New York Post this week on the uprisings we are seeing in certain blue cities in America. You wrote the radical leftists who are objecting to any and all ICE operations are blurring a most important line between legal and illegal. Can you just explain what you mean by that and about this hill the Democrats have chosen to die on, which is protecting illegal immigrants at all costs?
Well, it's quite amazing, actually, when you think about it, because it's not just ended up with protecting illegal immigrants. It's protecting illegal immigrants who've carried out crimes. I mean, there have been ICE officers who've been trying to detain people who have committed rapes and other crimes since being in the US illegally. And they find a whole load of sort of liberal, tends to be women, strangely, standing in their way and trying to stop them carrying out this act. This is a terrible strategic mistake, apart from anything else, by the activist left. Most people, including Democrats, actually do not want illegal foreign criminals who've committed crimes in the US to be allowed to remain in the US unbothered after breaking in and then committing crimes. To make this a hill to die on is a quite extraordinary thing. And the thing that I mentioned in that piece in the New York Post, which I just have said for years about the migration issue in all of our countries, is please can we remember that the difference between legal and illegal immigration is the law. And if you decide that the law is an unimportant concept, or it's something you can throw away, or that somebody who has come to the US completely legally and paid lawyers and done all the endless paperwork is effectively to be regarded in the same light as somebody who walked across the southern border in the Biden years and then started committing crimes in the US. Sorry, but you haven't just lost me, you'll have lost the majority of the American public. And when people on the left end up saying things like, you know, how could Donald Trump have been elected with a popular vote? Guys, this is how. It's because you choose absolutely terrible hills to die on, and Donald Trump's going to kill you at the polls each time.
And Douglas, we see that particularly from the celebrity class. Just recently at the Grammys, the number of artists who talked about immigrants, no differentiation between illegal and legal immigrants, and that famous line of Billie Eilish, no human is illegal on stolen land. That seems to be the mantra of the modern left at the moment, Douglas.
It's crazy, Rita. I mean, I think that these actors and others who we see doing this performative thing, I think they imagine that they're like Oscar Schindler in Schindler's List or something, or, you know, they're the sort of heroic person hiding Jews in the attic in some Second World War movie. I think they're totally divorced from reality. We already knew that, of course. But I think they're seeing themselves in this sort of unbelievably heroic light. And sorry, but this isn't that situation. It just isn't at all. And unfortunately, celebrities have decided to that somehow, you know, a foreign criminal is somehow like a Jew in the Holocaust, although not all of them seem to like Jews all that much anymore, but let's put that aside for a moment. And the federal agents of ICE are the kind of Nazi stormtroopers, and therefore that they, the great Hollywood celebrity class, are the only things standing between barbarism and civilization. And I'm sorry, but if civilization were actually reduced to such a stage, among other things, we'd be absolutely down a Swanee if we had to rely on Billie Eilish and co. To be our only line of defense.
Douglas Murray, thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure as always, Rita. Thank you.